Well, as I was in England, ahead of my group, the Bomber Command sent me up to the 322nd Bomb Group to observe the missions, the first missions of the B-26s. And it was pretty devastating. We expected a lot out of the airplane. We didn't know a damn thing about how good the Germans were going to be. And all I know is I had a lot of good friends on that, first rate also. And when they came back a few hours later, boy, every airplane was damaged. Almost every crewman was wounded. And my good friend Buzz Celio, he was all shot up, and his plane was shot up, and they lost one airplane. Well, nobody liked that very much. And then, strangely enough, for whatever reason, the Bomber Command decided they'd run the same mission again the next day, or a couple of days later, as that actually turned out. And that mission was just a total disaster. We watched all the airplanes take off, and we waited and waited and waited, and none of the airplanes came back. There was none. So it was a very, very discouraging situation at that particular air base. That's exactly what we were going to do with this B-26, which had already had kind of a checkered career, and tried to ground it and everything else. And now we found out we couldn't use it in combat, what we'd all been trained for as a low-level mission. But anyway, that night, General Ira Aker, who headed the 8th Air Force, which is the Air Force that we were in at that time, came down to that group, and he said that the airplane was grounded, which made us all very happy. And he says it'll be grounded until we can find some way to properly deploy the airplane without such tremendous losses. So he, not Aker, but the Bomber Command, got a couple of us officers together, Buzz Celio from the 322nd and Herb Thatcher from the 323rd, which had just arrived in England. And I was representing the 386 Bomb Group, which was on its way over to England. And we had a fellow there from the Bomber Command. And we talked to anybody and everybody that had combat experience that could tell us, give us some ideas of how we could use this airplane. Well, due to the lack of oxygen, it didn't do any good to talk to our people who were in the flying fortresses, the B-17s, our heavies, because they were at altitude we couldn't reach. All the British were bombing at night, so they weren't any help to us. But we got some ideas from the from the British fighter boys, and they said we had a lot of firepower, and if we flew close formations, we'd be a formidable adversary to the German pilots. And thank God they turned to be right on that. And then we spent quite a bit of time with the British anti-aircraft people. And that sort of boiled down to the fact that they showed us that it took 17 seconds to track an airplane and to set up the guns and load it, and for the shell to reach 12,000 feet. So 17 seconds gave you a little bit of time to maneuver, say, every 15 seconds, and which we did all the time we were flying. And that proved to be very successful. But many times you'd start a turn, and after a straight and level flight, you just start your turn, and boy, the flak could come up right in front of you where you would have been. So my group finally arrived, and we had decided we would all bomb at 12,000 feet, and so we all became operational at 12,000 feet.